пожар здесь.
Russia and Ukraine may be entering another unpredictable phase of the war as new battlefield developments continue reshaping the conflict. Over the last several weeks, military analysts have increasingly focused on how both sides are adapting their strategies around drones, logistics, infrastructure strikes, and long-range pressure operations rather than relying purely on traditional offensives. According to multiple reports, Ukraine has continued expanding operations targeting military infrastructure, transportation hubs, fuel depots, and supply routes behind Russian lines. Rather than attempting rapid territorial breakthroughs, Kyiv appears increasingly focused on weakening Russia's ability to sustain long-term offensive operations. This strategy is designed to create constant pressure across multiple sectors simultaneously. Russian military bloggers and analysts have repeatedly expressed concern about the growing scale and sophistication of Ukrainian drone operations. Coordinated strikes involving multiple drones launched from different directions are reportedly becoming more common in several regions. These attacks force Russian air defenses to remain under continuous strain. The psychological impact of long-range strikes is also becoming increasingly significant. Unlike conventional frontline warfare, drone operations create uncertainty deep behind the battlefield. Military facilities, industrial infrastructure, energy sites, and transportation networks can suddenly become vulnerable targets with little warning. This changes how both sides think about security and resource allocation. At the same time, Ukraine continues benefiting from intelligence support and advanced battlefield coordination provided by Western allies. Satellite surveillance, targeting systems, and reconnaissance capabilities have significantly improved Ukraine's ability to conduct precision operations. Russia, however, continues adapting rapidly as well. Moscow has expanded electronic warfare systems, reinforced defensive fortifications, and dispersed military assets to reduce vulnerability to precision strikes and drone attacks. Even so, analysts say the pace of technological adaptation inside the war remains extremely high. The conflict is increasingly becoming one of the first large-scale drone wars in modern military history, where both sides continuously experiment with new tactics in real time. FPV drones, AI-assisted targeting, electronic warfare systems, and long-range strike capabilities are now central components of modern warfare. The implications extend far beyond Ukraine itself. Military planners across NATO countries are closely studying the conflict because many of the tactics being developed today could influence future military doctrine throughout Europe and beyond. Defense experts are particularly focused on how relatively inexpensive drones are capable of threatening highly expensive military systems and infrastructure. This has already forced several governments to reconsider the future structure of battlefield logistics and air defense networks. Meanwhile, the economic pressure of the conflict continues affecting both Russia and Ukraine. Russia has maintained large-scale military production despite sanctions, but doing so requires enormous industrial mobilization and financial resources. Ukraine, meanwhile, remains heavily dependent on continued Western support to sustain defensive operations and replace battlefield losses. As a result, time itself is becoming one of the most important weapons in the conflict. Both Russia and Ukraine appear convinced they can outlast the other side if enough pressure is maintained for long enough. This means the war is increasingly becoming a contest of endurance, industrial capacity, technological innovation, and political will rather than purely territorial gains. At the same time, civilians continue facing the consequences. Air raid sirens, blackouts, infrastructure damage, and long-range strikes have become part of daily life across large parts of Ukraine. Russia has also experienced increasing disruption in some regions due to Ukrainian attacks targeting strategic infrastructure. Several analysts now believe both sides are preparing for a prolonged phase of the war where sustained pressure becomes more important than major offensives. In many ways, the battlefield is no longer limited to trenches and front lines. Instead, the conflict increasingly extends into logistic systems, industrial infrastructure, transportation networks, and energy facilities. For Ukraine, this strategy may represent one of the few realistic ways to offset Russia's larger industrial and manpower advantages. Russia, meanwhile, continues attempting to maintain pressure through missile strikes, mass drone attacks, and continuous artillery operations. The Kremlin appears determined to convince both Ukraine and Western governments that prolonged resistance will eventually become unsustainable. But despite the pressure, Ukraine continues adapting. And that adaptability may ultimately become one of the defining factors of the entire war. Before we finish, I want to hear your thoughts on this situation. Do you think Ukraine's evolving strike strategy can significantly change the course of the war? Or will Russia eventually overwhelm Ukraine through superior resources and industrial production? Leave your opinion down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our latest updates on Ukraine, Russia, NATO, and major global conflicts as they happen. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next report.